Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about leveraging asset lifecycle management solutions. I'm Dan from Trimble. I'm joined by Becky, also from Trimble, and then more interesting or important for us is we have Chad Foley, who's from the City of Raleigh. So I know I always find it far more interesting in these webinars when we have customers talking. So. But unfortunately, you got to listen to me and Becky for a little bit, or at least unfortunately, you got to listen to me, and you'll be very fortunate to listen to Becky. And then we'll get to the meat of the presentation today to hear from Chad. Now, one of the exciting parts about today's webinar from a thematic perspective is that we're here to get a little bit of an update. So some of you may have been on a webinar with us a while ago. We think it's definitely more than a year ago, perhaps as long as 2 years ago, though my Lord, time's flying by. And we had Chad on, and we're going to talk a little bit about what changed between when we last met and today. So it's a little bit about where are they now. So anyways, without further ado, let's move forward. And I have a couple slides I want to talk to. I'm going to hand it over to my wonderful co-host, Becky. She has a couple slides she wants to talk to, and as I mentioned, then we'll get to the meat of the presentation with Chad. But one of the things that we've done recently within Trimble is organize all of our solutions that have to do with owners, and specifically the category that we're focused on as a group within Trimble is around asset lifecycle management. And really the important word in there from our perspective is that lifecycle component. And under asset lifecycle management, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a little bit more detail, we have two main focus areas. On the left-hand side is digital project delivery, and that's actually the area of the business that I look after. And then when we have a suite of solutions that help organizations, specifically owner-operator organizations, around delivering their projects, but the key word for us is digitally. I'm still somewhat surprised, a little bit dismayed. City of Raleigh is not in the category of what I'm about to talk about. In fact, that's why they're on the webinar talking with you today, because they are where you should want to be. But we have a lot of owner organizations that we interact with that are still managing projects based on paper. So even spreadsheets would be an advancement. And we're trying to move the industry far beyond even spreadsheets into full digital delivery. And then Becky oversees the part of our business that has to do with enterprise asset management. And so she'll talk to that. And City of Raleigh uses solutions from both sides of this chart. So again, asset lifecycle management's the problem we want to solve, and then digital project delivery and enterprise asset management is how we kind of break that down into more digestible chunks. So with that being said, a little bit more of a double click down into, well, what do we mean by asset lifecycle management? And that's the diagram. So in the center is, again, that consistency around asset lifecycle management. And then we have 4 slices around asset lifecycle management. So design, build, operate, maintain. You can take any one of those slices and break them down even further. In fact, some of the slides Becky will talk about breaks this down into actually 5 or maybe 6 major phases. But you got to design the asset, you build the asset, you operate and maintain the asset. Those are the main areas that we're looking at. And then as you kind of go out on the concentric circles, there's things you do when you're designing, when you're building, when you're operating and maintaining those assets. And then a big area of focus for Trimble is not only trying to move from paper to a digital delivery, but also moving from 2D to 3D. So rather than doing everything as 2D plans, we'd like to start doing things as 3D models, and not just a 3D model, not just taking 2D and making it 3-dimensional, but adding all the information components as part of that. And that's really what we're going to try to do, is how do we get information to flow during the various life cycle phases. So that's actually a perfect setup to hand it over to Becky and talk about some of the challenges we see in the industry today and what we're looking to change in the future. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Becky.
Thanks, Dan. So basically what we want to focus on here is, if you take that circle that Dan just showed for that asset lifecycle, and you kind of like take it from a circle into a straight line, these are basically the stages that an organization passes through. And what we're hoping to accomplish here with the concept that we're putting forward with these connected workflows is in relation to how data kind of gets siloed across these different departments within a single organization. Everybody's working as part of the same asset lifecycle, right? So there's the folks who are involved with the plan submittal, the plan review, the development design phase gets handed off to another department for the build phase. Once those assets are operational, infrastructure and responsibility transfers over to another team for the operation and maintenance stages. Through each of those handoffs and transfer between applications, there is a data loss that occurs in terms of the amount and quality of data that's associated to that infrastructure. And you can see here, there's what we're trying to represent here in terms of these lines and the troughs is really, the amount of data that starts to be collected or aggregated and the value of that data through the planning stage, let's say. And then as that planning stage completes and there's a handoff to another team in the organization, another application and set of solutions that are being used, there's a decrease. Some of that data gets lost. And we refer to that as dark data in the organization. It's data that exists somewhere. Nobody's quite sure where it exists, who's responsible for it, who maintains it, how to access it, or what format it's in. But it's data that's still relevant and necessary to actually maintain that infrastructure through the remaining stages of the life cycle. So what happens is through the transfer to the next team and the next department, that data ends up having to be rebuilt. And so then there's a resource cost that's allocated there in terms of the time of the staff and the just cost that's going into data collection again and trying to rebuild the data that somebody knows exists, nobody knows where it is. And so that's a cumulative cost that occurs through each stage of that life cycle and each handoff that occurs. And over time, we still do recognize a lot of value that's there for all the attribution that we have around the infrastructure, but these troughs of the handoff process and the data that gets lost along each step and that rebuilding and recollecting of the data, it does come at a cost to the organization. And in some cases, not all of it can be rebuilt. So, and I'm actually gonna, now that Chad's back online, I'm gonna hand it over to Chad because he had some commentary that he wanted to provide that kind of came out while we were talking about this during the prep.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I've seen this firsthand, especially between that build and operate stage where a new asset is constructed or a building or whatever it may be, a new road, and it could be there's just so many stakeholders that have a vested interest in those assets, and they don't catch wind of the new asset. They're just not aware. So our facilities staff, will always learn in the past, would always learn after the fact about this new asset, and they wouldn't, and then they'd have to scramble and try to find the as-builts on some shared drive or a thumb drive somewhere. Or, I mean, even I'm in the IT department, and I mean, if we're just doing a road widening, they could be adding traffic cameras or IT assets, and we'd like to be aware of that before it's finished, and then we have to go guess where the fiber is or the cameras are. So they're just, every department seems to be a stakeholder in these assets, and being kind of in the loop from the very beginning, from the planning phase, is just a huge advantage.
Thanks, Chad. So what we're hoping to accomplish is to get rid of those breaks in the handoff and that creation of the dark data by providing connected workflows where we're able to recognize across the solutions that we're able to offer within the owner and public sector division of Trimble. We have these technologies that are in place across different departments within an organization. And it's interesting, as this group was formed and we started collaborating together more, we started looking at, well, who are some of our mutual customers? Who can we reach out to understand what their needs are and how they need this data to move through the organization, how they need the systems to speak with each other. And we started putting together some of these meetings, and in some of these cases, it was the first time that staff from the same organization had ever met each other, or was even aware that these other solutions were even licensed and in place within the organization. And so that's a struggle that is just inherent with how these handoffs are taking place. When you're not even aware of who else in the organization is using the data, what application it's going to, it becomes more of a struggle to make sure that data gets communicated. So with the connected workflows, we're looking at identifying how we can start to bring together these technologies and bring together and identify the touch points where these workflow handoffs happen, how to start to connect them to provide a solution to our customers where the connections are already in place. It's not a burden that's put upon our customers to identify and then develop integrations between the solutions. It's something that we can actually offer, taking into account how the data should move, how different users throughout the organization access the systems, and what the workflows are that need to be supported, with understanding that it needs to be flexible to incorporate differences and variations across organizations and requirements across geographies, and incorporating that into the solution that we're able to provide. And so with that, enough talking from this side, and I'm going to hand things over to Chad and let him share what's actually going on in relation to this at the City of Raleigh.
Thanks, Becky. Yeah, hey everyone. So just a quick background. My name is Chad Foley. I work in IT department, City of Raleigh. I've been here for about 16 years. We've had CityWorks for most of that time. And we acquired EBuilder about 3 years ago. I'd say we're very mature with our CityWorks usage across a good 7 departments, everything from our public utilities, our water and sewer utility, to our parks, solid waste, transportation, anything in the field. We are heavy users of CityWorks. Every call that comes in our call center, it goes into CityWorks as a service request. We're talking thousands of work orders a day. And so, the EBuilder side of the house is somewhat fairly new. Right before COVID, we got into EBuilder, and we're currently in the process of rolling it out to these same departments. So right now it's just within stormwater and our roadway design and construction, our vertical construction group, and we're in the process of getting parks and transportation on board, as well as public utilities. So one thing that we're talking about today is this integrated workflow, and as I mentioned earlier, the ability to just communicate the planning, design, construction phase outside of our capital improvement project group is just a really big benefit of using EBuilder, because we can create these workflows. As you see here, here's a workflow. This one was created by one of our project managers. So our end users are creating this workflow. It's not an IT thing. And even though we support them and help out, so in this example, this is a pay application workflow. So we do, for any construction project that has a contractor, usually a CIP or a capital improvement project, we have a monthly process we run, this pay app or pay application, where we get an invoice from our contractor and we pay them. And so what we kind of want to highlight here is right there, kind of in the middle left, is a submit to CityWorks step. So the process gets initiated. It gets reviewed by the contractor. That's another huge benefit of the system, where our vendors can actually log in, and based on the permissions we give them, they can see certain things. So they can review the pay application, the materials used for that month, the line items, just to make sure we're all on the same page of how much we're going to pay them and for what. It keeps them honest, keeps everyone honest, really. But the interesting part that's new is the submit to CityWorks step there. So we have hundreds of CityWorks users, actually over 1,000, and they're so used to using CityWorks for their work, for like everything from adding a GIS asset to GIS to doing a field inspection. So with submit to CityWorks step allows them to continue to work out of CityWorks, not have to go and learn another tool or work out of EBuilder, and it just keeps them comfortable with what they're used to using. So in this example, as part of the pay application process, we have several different types of work activities we can initiate from EBuilder. In this example, it's an IDR, Inspector Daily Report, and that is done by an inspector that works out of CityWorks. And when they've done the inspection of the construction site, said yes, you did use this many tons of concrete or these I-beams or whatever it may be, when they close that inspection out, it then returns back to EBuilder and moves it on to the next step of the workflow. And then at the end of the month, all the different artifacts for that invoice gets appended to a PDF. There's a DocuSign integration where both parties can sign from within, digitally within EBuilder. And it just makes for a seamless integration where for example, the utility staff who are always working out of CityWorks, they can continue doing their work. That information gets exchanged between the two systems, and even the project can synchronize across the systems. But I'm trying to think what else. Let's maybe move on to the next group. So this is just kind of more from that integration. You have a full audit of every step that happens. There's logic to retry if there's some issue, or where you can resubmit it. Everything gets approved and logged and audited. And it's just like I said at the top there, a connected workflow. So really, it all starts with the EBuilder in the planning and design phase. You create a project in EBuilder, and if you choose, the flag to integrate with CityWorks for that project, within seconds it'll create a project within CityWorks. And then if you initiate any type of work activity in EBuilder for CityWorks, as like we illustrated in that diagram, it will tie that work activity to that project within CityWorks. So when they're working out of CityWorks, they're doing their normal workflow. They're adding their equipment cost, their labor cost, their material cost, and that's all tracked and tied to the project. So it's like people can have, it's almost like they can have a meeting within a work order, because all that information's in the work order in CityWorks, which they're used to using, and yet the engineers and construction staff and the project managers, they also have that information available to them in EBuilder. And we even put hyperlinks in the comments so they can kind of click back and forth. Just to kind of illustrate the integration, I'll show a quick video here. It'll go fast, but we can always replay it if we need to. So this is EBuilder. I'm logging in. This is just a little 2-minute video I made that I'll talk to it, but it kind of illustrates what I was mentioning here, where I basically go into a project that I'm on. On this example, it's Dix Park Phase 2. And as soon as, when this project was originally created, I chose the option to create the project within CityWorks. CityWorks has a project management module called OpEx. So you'll see CityWorks project integration, yes, no. You say yes, it's saved. Within seconds, the project's in CityWorks. And it brings over all those project details, budget information. So we flip over to CityWorks here. This is the OpEx project management module. There's the project that's been created, and you can then view the project details that came over from EBuilder. You can, and then you'll notice there's also a work activity that's associated with this project. And in this case, that work activity was also initiated from within EBuilder, from that submit to CityWorks step that we showed in the workflow earlier. So this is that pay app or pay application example. Our monthly process to pay our invoices. You'll see there's a drop down where I can choose the type of work activity I want to create within CityWorks as part of that pay application process. We're going to do an IDR, or Inspector Daily Report. That's on that submit to CityWorks step there. And then as soon as that is approved, then it shows up in CityWorks as a work activity tied to the project within CityWorks. So we can keep all those work activities within one project with the budget and tracking the equipment, labor, and material cost. This is a view of it within CityWorks. And like I said, it's just a seamless integration. The users that need to view it in EBuilder can see it in EBuilder. The users that need to see it in CityWorks can see it in CityWorks. And it's worked out quite well. So we're currently in the process of expanding this to other departments and more work activities. So right now it's just in, like I said, stormwater engineering services, but we're rolling out to transportation and public utilities and parks. Some of the benefits here, really for me, it's all about that communication aspect, that no matter which system you're in, you can see information about the project. You could be notified about these assets before they're already finished and completed or constructed. To me, that's what I'm seeing is the most benefit, that project transparency. Like I said earlier, we have 20 plus departments, and every department has a vested interest in these assets in one way or another, whether it's cost or operation and maintenance on it, or location. We have work activities to add the GIS asset to our GIS because that asset is spawned in EBuilder. And then, it eliminates dual data entry. Nobody likes dual data entry. We can continue working out of the systems that we're familiar with, and we don't have to go back and forth keying in these details. It just kind of flows across back and forth. Some of the other benefits, really it's about giving the heads up to these stakeholders. So we can easily, just through configuration, our end users configure, well, maybe the real estate group wants to know about this project because there's going to be a land acquisition for the road widening, or maybe facilities wants to know about the project because the as-builts are in EBuilder, and they will know exactly where their assets are, the HVAC, the boilers, the electrical, plumbing. That whereas before it was just kind of a guessing game through phone calls and email and Excel spreadsheets and like I said, as-builts on the shared drive and buried in somebody's folder. So that's the gist of it. It's like I said, we're expanding it to the other departments, adding in new work activities, but it's just really allowed us to just have that kind of communication that we didn't have before, or that visibility into these projects.
Awesome, thanks, Chad. So a couple housekeeping items I should have started with, but I'll get to it now, which is number one, there is an ability to ask questions for Chad or Becky or myself. I'm not going to limit to who you can ask your questions, but there is a question section in the interface. So if you want to go ahead and ask a question, please do so. What we're going to do now, though, is take a moment and we're going to launch a poll. And what we're interested in is, based on what Chad spoke about, where do you find that from a criticality perspective? How important or how impactful do you see connecting your project delivery with your asset management system? So if you could go ahead and give us on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is completely irrelevant. I don't know why I showed up to this webinar. And a 5 is you would change my life. So if you go ahead and take some time and select from 1 to 5, and then we should be able to share the results with you. And again, I want to remind you, while you're taking the poll, to go ahead and type in any questions that you have for Chad. All right, I'll give a couple more seconds here for people to respond on a scale of 1 to 5. All right, we're back. So looks like we can see the results, and let me make that bigger so I can actually read them.
So I'd say about 75% of the respondents voted for like a 4 or 5.
Ah, excellent. Well, that's good. That's good news. Hoping we didn't get 90% with a 1, because that would be very disappointing for us. All right, well, thank you. Thank you for your feedback. And so now we're gonna move into the questions section. So the first question, Chad, we have is, do you run into instances where a work order in CityWorks needs to be created in EBuilder, or vice versa? Does the integration work with that? So I think you showed it going from EBuilder into CityWorks. Do you have it ever coming in the other direction?
That wasn't part of our original workflow, but I think that technically would be possible. The project is tracked in EBuilder from that workflow, that cross-departmental workflow. People are creating work orders all the time within CityWorks. with things that aren't tied to, say, EBuilder CIP project. But you know, that I can see that being a valid workflow, and I know technically it would be possible. There probably would be some configuration. I don't know, Becky, have you heard of that thought about it going the other way, where, because right now it's initiating out of EBuilder to CityWorks,
Mm-hmm.
but I think within CityWorks has the capability to, you know, since it does communicate back when you, based on some action or some event, and it's triggering the EBuilder to go to the next step of the workflow. I could see, you know, initiating some sort of workflow advancement via CityWorks.
Yeah, so we've actually encountered this across a couple of customers. So, you know, I mentioned when we first kicked this off, we did a few customer interviews to try and understand this is where we're headed with it. Since then, we've done some socialization to our customers internally. And with that, that led to more customers kind of stepping forward. And so what Chad is showing here was the initial workflow, the more predominant, I guess I would say, workflow that we heard back from customers. What you're asking, John, is totally technically possible. And there are customers who have actually gone through and said that they would like to see a workflow that supports the reverse. And in those instances, what's been described is CityWorks has the capabilities because of the interaction with managing all the maintenance activity, right? We're able to go through and identify which assets are at the highest infrastructure business risk for the BRE scoring. And what we're hearing back from some other customer sites is that they'd like to be able to go through and say, okay, so we know from CityWorks, these are all the these are all the infrastructure assets that are the highest risk of failure. We want to go ahead and create a project now for replacement of those. So in that case, going through creating those work orders in the project initially in CityWorks for those high risk assets, and then pushing it over to be prioritized in EBuilder in terms of all the capital projects that need to take place. So, and that's just one instance that we heard in terms of how that data wants to flow from CityWorks to EBuilder. But there's, in honesty, there's unlimited workflows that can be supported here because everything's taking place at an API platform level. So there's a lot of flexibility for where items get triggered, which data gets translated throughout the organization and through the different solutions.
Yeah, as we were rolling EBuilder out to the different departments, when we started to socialize it to, say, public utilities, some other groups, they were resistant at first because they were saying, hey, we're already tracking this in CityWorks. We don't want to learn a new thing. We're comfortable. So a lot of this is a really good incentive for them to, you know, for their CIP group to, you know, use the EBuilder portion with the finances and the invoicing and payments and the DocuSign integration and, you know, all the contract different workflows we have. But the utilities group can now still work out of CityWorks. So it was designed to kind of spawn out of EBuilder, but not interrupt their current business.
Good. So the next question is, and there's a little bit of a theme, a couple questions around this. So it's about, have you developed the ability to load assets from EBuilder into CityWorks along with the maintenance required for these new assets? So moving assets that were built using EBuilder into CityWorks for operation and maintenance?
So one of the first things that happens in a new EBuilder project is at some point somebody has to draw the polygon of where the construction site is, or polygons or points or whatever it may be in GIS. We've had some thoughts about automating that through converting the CAD files directly into the map, because there's tools and, you know, Esri tools that can do that. But at some point the area of construction needs to be added to GIS. Now that same map is pulled into CityWorks, so it's there instantly. It's the same exact map. It's just CityWorks is referencing it. So yeah, that is part of our workflow. But you know, yeah.
And I know it's an area Becky mentioned. There's almost an unlimited potential of connecting EBuilder from a digital project delivery perspective and CityWorks from an asset management perspective. And part of what we're doing with our existing customers, like the City of Raleigh, is figuring out how do we prioritize that work. But I do know it's a goal of ours that information you're tracking during the design and build phase of the project gets tagged and transferred with as little effort, hopefully zero effort by the human, into the asset management system. In the case of City of Raleigh, is CityWorks. So that's certainly a goal that we're driving towards. So I know there's another one in here about warranties and other critical documents that are collected, and that's that dark data that Becky talked to. So those are things we're absolutely planning on doing. And then Raleigh is progressive enough, which will lead into my next question, to try some of these things out with us to see what actually adds value to the end user and what just sounds nice when it's on a whiteboard. So the next question, Chad, is how does the decision to utilize Trimble's digital project delivery system and enterprise asset management systems relate with your overall innovation as a city or a smart city?
Sorry. So, you know, I'm in the IT group. I'm supporting these different systems. I mean, I think, you know, I think some of the things I'm seeing out in the field or within the different, you know, software systems, just to have all these systems communicate together to kind of tell a single story, that kind of ground truth story. So I'm not as familiar with some of the Trimble hardware that we use in the field, but at least on the software side, just the ability to you know, sign in the system, see exactly where something is on a project or the status or what state an asset is in. I mean, that, you know, versus having to call somebody or find a file in a folder somewhere. I mean, that's a large question because there's so many different solutions, you know, from the location GPS units to the smart fire hydrants that have pressure sensors built in that, you know, we can, you know, get that feedback in real time. I mean, I think that it's pretty exciting. The technology's out there. It's just a matter of getting it, you know, where we're comfortable with it and using it on a daily basis.
Are the implementations, just to take another angle on that question, are the implementations of the solutions that you talked about today in support of Raleigh's innovation and smart city initiatives, or was it just independent of those initiatives?
That's a great question. I'm always trying, so we do have a smart cities initiative, and I'm always trying to work with those people and explain how a smart city initiative doesn't have to be some, you know, sexy drone action or some, you know, self-driving bulldozer. A smart city is really about knowing where your costs are and knowing what you're spending, and having the visibility into that, standardizing how you handle these projects, being smart with your money and efficient in your work. So I mean, technically these weren't under a smart city umbrella, but I'm constantly raising that flag to the, you know, city manager's office or various groups that this is what a real smart city is. It's not about a flashy, you know, a flashy smart city initiative. It's more about efficiency and cost savings. So I would like to, you know, kind of highlight that, and maybe on our next kind of iteration of this, as we continue kind of to expand these different initiatives, we could be more under that umbrella.
Awesome. And then just a quick story I want to tell. I just got back a couple weeks ago from one of our customers, the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewer District, MMSD. And one of the things we learned from them in implementing technology is to be better stewards of the taxpayer dollars. And it was a really eye-opening moment for me, predominantly coming from the private sector, where things are about trying to bring projects in under budget their number one issue was not spending the money that was raised in order to improve the assets in the greater Milwaukee area. So they went from something in the 70-ish% of the money they raised was being spent to getting to the 99% threshold. So part of this is also just about demonstrating good stewardship of the taxpayer dollars of the citizens that live within the regions that our customers service. So I have a category of questions. There's two of them that I'm going to combine together, and then I'm going to actually answer them, which is about, one was around, is asset management a separate module in EBuilder? That was one question. The other one is there actually an asset management module in EBuilder, or is it just simply a process that was built in EBuilder? And so one of the things that, and so these are good questions to help differentiate. You heard Chad use two product brand names, EBuilder, CityWorks. So EBuilder is the project management, capital project management solution. So was the workflow that Chad showed. However, at the stage of the workflow where Chad showed that was send to CityWorks, that is then launching an integration that's then interacting with CityWorks, which is another product in the Trimble portfolio. So asset management is not a module in EBuilder. Asset management is not just simply taking a process and calling it an asset management process. Asset management at Trimble is an entire additional solution that we have in our portfolio. And then what City of Raleigh has done is connected the two. So EBuilder is connected with CityWorks. So again, it's not a module of EBuilder. And therefore, the second half of the question, which I didn't answer on, is it a separate module, is there additional cost of that separate module? So no, it's not an additional cost for the module because it's not a module. Yes, CityWorks is an additional product is a product that has its own cost, and we can certainly walk you through that. So two products in the Trimble portfolio that are connected with each other. The final question that I have is how do new assets, well, I guess this is actually a subset of one of the questions I already asked you, which is how do new assets in the SIP project and EBuilder get created in CityWorks? So you actually already answered that question. I'll give a couple more moments for anybody on the phone to ask a question, but one of the questions we discussed in the prep to today's call are a little bit of the lessons learned. 2 years ago, you had a vision. 2 years later, you actually built something. Typically, there's a change in what you thought versus what you did. Any lessons learned? You did a little bit saying originally some of the asset management folks, the CityWorks folks, were hesitant to use EBuilder, and then you got them over that hesitancy. But any other lessons learned you want to share with the group, with the folks on the call?
Sure. I mean, a lot. It's hard to get buy-in sometimes with new technology. We have some people that are getting ready to retire who aren't interested in changing their ways, but we have younger staff that are really embrace technology and these mobile apps and different things. I think the lessons learned is to empower the user to this is not an IT function. We're in support of it, but we can enable these users to create their own custom workflows, their own custom forms, their own document management structure for all these artifacts that go with all these projects. So that's been a huge win, just to kind of allow our power users to create their own workflows or edit their workflows. And we have governance around that. And we try to standardize that across departments as much as possible. There are a lot of workflows that have a kind of decision point or a branching where if department equals utilities, go in this direction. If it equals stormwater, go in this direction. But it's still in the same workflow. So once we were able to convince the different departments that there's not just one workflow on how you do a pay application or a contract approval, or that you can design it how it meets the needs of your department. That's when we started to see a lot of buy-in and just getting people to put in the projects into the system initially. I mean, we just passed a parks bond in November that we're putting in projects through 2024, and these are not technical people, not computer people that are putting these in. And then to have everyone, and then the other big impactful thing was to just standardize how we report up to executive management, because in the past they would just, various departments will provide information on these CIP projects in various formats, but now the city manager's office can just log in and kind of get a bird's eye view of what projects are under budget, completed, over budget, behind schedule. So just, kind of getting people to log in and look at it. And then that's when we started to see kind of the buy-in. And also, we do refresher trainings. We have office hours every Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. If you have any kind of question about CityWorks or EBuilder, you can join in that meeting. And usually it's pretty quiet, but we even have vendors that will join those office hour meetings. We do refresher trainings for vendors. We've made quite the library of little training videos of here's how you add a new project, or here's how you create a public forum. We're working on, we actually have a video now that we're circulating on this CityWorks integration piece, because everybody at the City of Raleigh knows CityWorks. So, and also small groups, we don't want to do a big bang. We like to roll out. I call it the CityWorks and EBuilder Ambassador Program, where we just kind of target smaller groups and show them, give them their logins, or get them an account. And they can't, and we try to convince them that you can't break it. Just log in. You don't have to learn everything about EBuilder. You just need to know what your role provides, what step in that process that you're relevant to. If you need to do a financial analyst approval, you just do that one piece. If you need to do an inspector daily report and you're in the field, you can just do that one piece. You don't have to learn the whole system.
Good. So the next question has to do with, are there other reasons other than efficiencies and cost savings for the City of Raleigh in your investment reasoning in technology? So some of the examples were sustainability, equity. Just are there some other than the standard everybody talks about? Let's save some money. Let's make our employees more efficient.
It's a good question. Can you repeat the first part of that?
Yeah, so it's really just, so folks are used to cost savings and efficiency as being reasons why you invest in technology, but as a public agency, are there other considerations you have when evaluating your technology investments, such as the impact on helping you be more sustainable, providing equity within your community? Are there other attributes you use in your decision making?
I mean, I definitely think so. It's somewhat early days for us. We have the whole project transparency has been large. I'm sure our sustainability division, I don't think they currently have a login, but they would love to see what's going on with these projects and have their voice heard on the sustainability aspect of it. Our auditing group is very interested in not just the dollars and spend on these projects, but are we following best practices on how we do these projects? Another benefit or thought was just how we standardize things. So we had a good example would be, we have one department, say our utilities department, working with a contractor, and then another department, say vertical construction, would have a contract with that same exact contractor on a different project or a related project. But these departments in the past were handling taxes and how we charge taxes on these projects in two totally different ways. Some up front in the project, some at the end. It was confusing to the contractor. It just wasn't standard, but it just was the way it was always done, and those departments weren't communicating. So that kind of side benefit of saying, hey, let's standardize how we do our capital improvement projects, so it's kind of a clean, efficient workflow. But I think that will grow as more people get their hands in the system.
Got it. And then one of the things I'll share beyond City of Raleigh is we're working with other customers around equity is the ability both within your community, the community our customers servicing, is money being spent equitably across the different demographics within that community. So you can see what neighborhoods are you focusing on, et cetera. And then on the contractor side, and Chad mentioned contractors and how contractors are getting paid, you can also track how are you doing from an equity perspective on the contractors. Are you working with SMBs and WBEs and MBEs? So you can track those different statistics and see how much of the city's funds are being paid to different types of disadvantaged categories. So those capabilities do exist within the product, and I know customers use that. Independent of Trimble technology, which will dovetail into the next question, it's really exciting for me when I get to visit our customers to see what other innovations are they doing around sustainability specifically. So that same thing, MMSD, I was able to see some of the work they're doing around rainwater collection, especially in their urban areas. So getting rainwater collection apparatus to their community so they can collect the water off a building and then use that, for example, watering an urban lawn or a garden rather than pulling water out of the main water supply. And another example they showed me is permeable concrete they're using for sidewalks and parking lots. So the water doesn't just run off those surfaces, but gets absorbed through the surface back into the ground. So it's really neat to see non-Trimble stuff that's also helping from a sustainability perspective. So the next question is, sorry, so I got that one. Okay, so the next question has to do with, of course, because we're Trimble, we're talking about Trimble products, and because City of Raleigh is using Trimble for both sides of the equation, we want them to come on and talk or speak. However, this question is it CityWorks or bust when it comes to asset management systems that EBuilder connects to? And then I'm going to reverse the question of similar, if you're a CityWorks customer, is it EBuilder or bust? Or are there other digital project delivery systems you're going to connect with? So one of the things that we are committed to, and Becky kind of answered this question implicitly, is we are using our own APIs in order to connect our solutions together. So there's nothing that prevents a customer from connecting either of our solutions to another non-Trimble solution within their system. So we are intentionally not going to do anything that would prevent you from connecting EBuilder to your own asset management solution if it happens to not be CityWorks. Vice versa for CityWorks, nothing will be done to prevent you from connecting CityWorks to whatever your digital project delivery system, even if it's not Trimble. Now, we may question your sanity of why would you use anything but CityWorks or EBuilder for these two solutions, but technically we're not going to get in your way. So the next question, and we have two more questions. So this is going back to, I think, connecting between the two solutions. I'm just going to read this out as written. So as an example, if the EBuilder project includes a replacement air handler, would it just be a form or a process that contains a document with the new and old equipment that is shared with CityWorks that then requires you to manually input the information about that equipment into CityWorks? Or is the data actually transferring back and forth? And the final, what is the actual integration aside from opening a work order per se, or a project in CityWorks from EBuilder? So what, in your example, Chad, like what data was flowing? So you created the project, we get that, and some project data flowed, but in the work order, what data actually came from EBuilder and went into CityWorks?
I mean, we did a field mapping exercise. It's really anything the staff would need to know about that work order. You know, of course, address, location's always there. You know, the work order template has a lot of defaults that, based on the category of the type of work activity, pretty much any project attribute can be mapped over to the work order. You know, we have, like I said, URLs going into the comments field in both systems. So if, say, you wanted to click back and link from the CityWorks comments and click and jump over to the EBuilder corresponding information, you can do that. Or if you're an EBuilder, you can look at the comments and click the link to get into the CityWorks work order. So everything that work order would need, depending on the work order category, is pulled over. So we, in my mind, there's kind of two main integration points: that project integration with all the project budget details and project information, and then the work order or work activity could be inspection, service request, or work order going into CityWorks. So it is, we talked. You mentioned equipment. Right now, we're just creating work activities. We're not working with material or equipment in the integration piece, but the work order could be, have the default equipment on it already configured in CityWorks, or material, depending on what the work order is or what crew is assigned. They'll have their common equipment or material associated with that crew that's already on the work order. So a lot of that's handled kind of on the CityWorks side, but pretty much any information can come over. And as far as like what's actually being integrated, it's really that work activity details. These APIs are some of the friendliest APIs I've ever worked with. So there is some desire to expand some functionality, or hey, can we attach these PDFs into the work order on the fly? We didn't do that in our first run through, but that's on a roadmap. And I'm sure as we have other departments adopt this, there'll be things that they want that will look to enhance the system.
Awesome. And then the final question, just want to acknowledge the question came in. I'm pretty sure I answered it, but it was around, does EBuilder have the ability to link up with other asset management systems? So again, the answer is yes. That would just simply be the integrations that Chad did between CityWorks and EBuilder would, in your instance, be between EBuilder and the existing system you have. So we can certainly assist from that perspective. So with that, I want to thank Chad for his, once again, awesome presentation. I appreciate him sharing the good as well as some of the challenges in what they've done today, and honesty. And we didn't say everything's push the proverbial easy button, everything worked. It was lickety split and we're all done and we have nothing else to do. So very honest update as to where he is and what's next. I want to thank my wonderful co-host Becky for her part of the presentation, and I do want to give her the opportunity for any closing words.
Yep, I'm good. I think we're pretty much at time too. So just to say thank you everybody for joining the call today, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Thanks everyone. Be well.
Thanks all.